Asha woke up early every morning to the sounds of the village. The roosters crowed and children ran barefoot across the dusty paths. She had learned to move quietly so as not to wake Kofi, her husband, who had grown colder with each passing day. When Asha first married him, Kofi had been kind and cheerful, but something had changed. Now he often found fault in everything she did. She remembered the first time he had called her ugly during her pregnancy. She had been shocked, hurt deeply, and yet she had said nothing. Instead, she had smiled faintly, pretending his words did not matter, though they stung like thorns in her heart. Each day was long and heavy. Asha would sweep the small house, wash the few clothes they had, cook simple meals over the smoky fire, and try to keep the small garden alive. The sun was hot and the work never seemed to end. Sometimes she sat under the shade of the baobab tree near her house, resting her hands on her growing belly, thinking of the child growing inside her. She wondered if the baby could feel the sadness around her, if it could hear the whispers of worry she tried so hard to hide. Kofi often returned home late, his face dark with anger. Small things could make him snap. If the soup was too salty, if the firewood was damp, if the floor was not perfectly swept, he would shout. "Why are you so careless?" he said one evening, his voice sharp. "Can't you do anything right?" Asha lowered her eyes and said softly, "I am trying, Kofi." But her words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Despite the harshness, Asha did not give up. She remembered her mother's advice. A gentle heart is stronger than a loud voice. Be patient, child, and your time will come. So she continued quietly, tending to the small garden, feeding the chickens, and preparing meals with what little they had. Sometimes, when the children in the village came to visit, they would laugh and play nearby, and Asha would smile, feeling a small warmth in her chest. These small moments reminded her that life had small joys, even if her home was filled with sorrow. One morning, Asha went to the river to fetch water. The sun was just rising, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. She balanced the heavy clay pot on her head and walked carefully along the narrow path. Birds chirped in the trees and the water sparkled in the sunlight. As she bent to fill her pot, she noticed a small figure struggling by the riverbank. It was an elderly woman who had tripped over a root and fallen. Asha rushed to help her, steadying the woman and guiding her to a safe spot. "Thank you, child," said the woman, her eyes twinkling. "You have a kind heart. The world needs more people like you." Asha felt warmth spread in her chest. For a moment she forgot her troubles. The woman, whose name was Mama Lela, sat with her and spoke gently about life. She said, "You will face hardships, but your heart will carry you through. Do not let the words of others weigh you down." Asha thought about Kofi and the pain he had caused her. She had felt lonely and unworthy, but Mama Lela's words gave her hope. That day, on the way back from the river, she held her belly and whispered to her unborn child, "We will be strong together. We will not let the world's harshness change who we are inside." Over the weeks, Asha began to visit Mama Lela often. She learned small things, how to recognize herbs, how to help people with minor sicknesses, and how to stay calm even when life felt heavy. These lessons gave her a sense of purpose she had never known before. While Kofi continued to scold and criticize, Asha felt a quiet power growing inside her. She realized that her worth did not come from Kofi's approval, but from her own heart and her care for others. Still, some nights were hard. Asha would lie awake, listening to Kofi's deep breathing in the other room, wondering if he would ever change. Sometimes she cried quietly, feeling the weight of loneliness. But even in those moments she told herself that she had the strength to endure. She thought about the baby she carried and how important it was to be calm and brave. Her dreams were no longer just about herself. They were about giving her child a world filled with hope, not fear. One evening, the village held a small gathering near the central fire. People sang, laughed, and shared stories of the day. Asha stood at the edge, watching the flames dance and listening to the children play. She felt a pang of longing for happiness, but she also felt pride. Despite all the harsh words and loneliness, she had kept her heart open. She had not let anger or sadness consume her. She had helped the elderly, smiled at the children, and cared for her unborn child. In her heart, she knew that she was stronger than she had ever imagined. As the stars appeared in the sky, Asha walked home slowly, carrying the empty water pot. Kofi was already asleep and the house was quiet. She looked at the little garden, the small home, and the path she had walked countless times, and she realized something important. Life might be harsh and people might be unkind, but she could choose her own strength. She could choose to rise above cruelty. She could choose hope. And so, with her hand on her belly, Asha whispered again to her child, "We will be brave. We will face the world together." One day everything will change. She smiled softly, feeling a tiny kick inside her belly as if the baby agreed. That small movement, a life growing within her, filled her heart with warmth she had not felt in a long time. It reminded her that even in sadness, life brings tiny miracles and reasons to keep moving forward. The days continued, some heavy and some bright, but Asha faced each one with quiet courage. She tended to her home, visited Mama Lela, and prepared for the baby with care and hope. Though Kofi's words still cut at times, she no longer let them define her. She had found a strength deeper than his cruelty, a strength that came from love, compassion, and a heart that refused to break. Asha knew that the road ahead would not be easy. But for the first time in a long while she felt ready. She had hope. She had courage. And she had a life growing inside her that depended on her love and her bravery. Whatever the future held, she would face it with strength. She would rise no matter how heavy the world felt. Asha had always been a quiet person, but the day she met Mama Lela changed something inside her. It had started like any other day. The sun was bright, and the village was alive with the sounds of children laughing, goats bleating, and women chatting as they carried water and firewood. Asha was walking along the river, balancing a heavy clay pot on her head. She had gone there early to fetch clean water before Kofi woke up and began his day with complaints. As she neared a bend in the river, she noticed a figure struggling near the edge. An elderly woman had tripped over a root and had fallen, twisting her ankle. Asha's heart skipped a beat. She quickly set down her pot and rushed to help the woman. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, helping the woman sit up and steady herself. The woman's face creased into a tired but warm smile. "Oh, my child, thank you for helping me. My name is Mama Lela," she said. Her voice was gentle, but it carried a wisdom that made Asha feel safe. "You have a kind heart. Not many stop to help these days." Asha blushed slightly, looking down at her feet. I just wanted to help, Mama," she said. "You fell and I couldn't leave you there." Mama Lela shook her head. "No, child, it is more than that. Helping others is a sign of strength, not weakness. Strength comes from the heart, not the hands. You have more courage in your heart than you know." Asha listened carefully, feeling something stir inside her. She had been living a life of quiet suffering, her husband Kofi often cruel and harsh, calling her ugly and blaming her for everything. She had been carrying this pain quietly, thinking it was her lot in life. But Mama Lela's words made her pause. Could she really be stronger than her hardships? Could she rise above the cruelty that followed her every day? Mama Lela motioned for Asha to sit beside her on the soft grass by the river. The water sparkled under the sunlight, and birds chirped above in the trees. "Tell me about your life, child," Mama Lela said. "Do you know why you feel so heavy inside?" Asha hesitated but then spoke softly, sharing a little about her life with Kofi. She told Mama Lela about the hurtful words, the harshness, the loneliness. She told her how she feared she was losing herself under the weight of it all. Mama Lela listened quietly, nodding with understanding. "My child," Mama Lela said finally, "life will test you. People may hurt you, words may cut deep, and it may feel like there is no hope. But you have a choice. You can let the world crush you, or you can let your heart grow stronger. You can use your kindness to build something beautiful, not just for yourself, but for others too." Asha looked at Mama Lela, her eyes wide. She had never thought of life that way. She had always focused on surviving, on enduring Kofi's harsh words, on keeping her home in order. But Mama Lela was speaking of something bigger, of purpose, of pride, of strength that came from helping others. For the first time in many months, Asha felt a spark of hope. She realized that her life could be more than her suffering. She could use her hands, her heart, and her mind to make a difference. She could help others and in doing so discover her own strength. Mama Lela smiled, noticing the change in Asha's eyes. "Come with me tomorrow," she said. "I will teach you about herbs and their healing powers. You can help people with knowledge and care, not just with your heart." Asha's heart leapt. She had heard stories of village healers, women who could cure fevers, ease pain, and calm the sick. But she had never thought she could be one of them. The idea was both exciting and frightening. What if she failed? What if Kofi laughed at her for trying? But Mama Lela's steady gaze gave her courage. The next morning, Asha woke before dawn, excitement coursing through her. She walked to Mama Lela's small hut at the edge of the village. The hut was simple, with a roof of dried grass and walls of clay, but it had a warmth that felt like home. Inside, shelves were lined with jars of dried leaves, roots, and powders. The air smelled of herbs and sunlight. Mama Lela showed Asha how to identify different plants, how to dry leaves for teas, how to crush roots for poultices, and how to mix simple remedies for common ailments. Asha listened carefully, her fingers trembling slightly as she worked. She realized she was learning not just about healing but about patience, observation and care. Days turned into weeks and Asha returned to Mama Lela daily. She began helping villagers quietly, giving them advice about herbs, showing them small remedies for headaches, stomach pains or minor cuts. People began to notice her kindness and knowledge. They smiled at her warmly when she passed, and some even asked for her help specifically. Asha's pride grew not from praise, but from the realization that she could make a difference. For the first time in her life she felt a sense of purpose that was hers alone. She was more than Kofi's cruel words, more than the heavy chores, more than the loneliness she had felt for so long. She was a healer, a helper, a woman with a heart strong enough to change lives. Even when Kofi came home and criticized her, Asha found that the words did not hurt as deeply. She had discovered an inner strength that could not be broken by insults or anger. Her heart was full of hope, and she carried that hope with her everywhere she went. One afternoon, as she helped a sick child with a herbal tea, the mother whispered to her, "You are a blessing, Asha. You have a gift." Asha smiled, feeling a warm glow inside. This was the first time she realized that kindness, when used with care and courage, could bring joy not just to others, but to herself as well. By the river, by the huts, in the small garden behind her home, Asha's life was changing slowly. She no longer felt trapped by fear or by Kofi's harsh words. She had found something more powerful than pain. She had found purpose, pride, and the quiet joy of helping others. Every small act of care, every patient smile, every bit of knowledge she shared, built her courage and her strength. At night, Asha would sit by the small fire in her hut, thinking of the day and planning for tomorrow. She placed her hands on her belly and whispered to the child growing inside her, "We are strong, my little one. We will learn, help, and grow together. The world may try to bring us down, but we will rise." The baby moved slightly as if agreeing, and Asha smiled, feeling warmth and hope fill her heart. Though life was still difficult, Asha no longer felt alone. She had Mama Lela's guidance, the trust of the villagers, and her own growing strength. She knew that no matter what hardships came, she had found a way to turn suffering into something beautiful. She had found her purpose, and that purpose was more powerful than any hurt. Asha understood that life was not just about surviving, it was about making a difference, however small, and finding pride in the kindness of her heart. She was no longer just a woman carrying pain. She was a woman carrying hope, knowledge, and the quiet power to change lives. And so, Asha continued her days walking the village paths, visiting Mama Lela, helping the sick, and learning every day. Her heart grew stronger, her spirit brighter, and her hope unshakable. Life was still hard, but it was full of meaning, and for the first time, Asha felt that she could face anything. Asha had changed a lot since she started learning from Mama Lela. Every day, she helped villagers with their small illnesses and troubles. She knew which herbs to use for a stomach ache, which leaves could help a fever, and which roots could be used to make a poultice for cuts and bruises. People began to talk about her in the village. "Asha is wise," they said. "She helps everyone with patience and care." Even the children liked her. They ran to her when they had minor scratches or when they wanted to ask about the plants in the garden. Kofi noticed the change too. He had always been used to Asha being quiet and fearful of his anger. But now she seemed different. She no longer flinched when he raised his voice. She moved calmly through the house, helping with chores, preparing meals, and still finding time to visit the villagers. Kofi felt confused. He had thought his harsh words would keep her small and weak. Instead, she had grown strong and respected. One morning, Kofi came home earlier than usual. Asha was kneeling by the garden, picking fresh herbs for a sick woman in the village. Kofi's face was dark and he frowned as he watched her. "Why are you always busy with others?" he said sharply. "Do you forget your home, your duties, your husband?" Asha looked up calmly. She had felt this anger from Kofi many times before, but she no longer let it control her. She placed the herbs gently in a basket and stood straight. "I am doing what I can," she said softly. "Helping others does not take away from my home. I'm still here, still caring for our family. Your words do not define me. I define myself." Kofi froze. He had expected her to cry, to shrink, or to argue, but she spoke with calm and quiet strength. For the first time he felt ashamed. He realized how wrong he had been, how many times he had hurt her with his harshness, and how much he had underestimated her. Asha had grown stronger not because of anger or pride, but because of her kindness, patience, and quiet courage. The villagers noticed Kofi's change too. That afternoon they gathered near the well, talking about Asha's skills and her gentle heart. "She helps everyone," one woman said. "Even when life is hard, she is patient and kind." Another man nodded. "I have never seen anyone as brave as Asha. She faces troubles with a calm heart. Even Kofi has to respect her now." Asha's work was not always easy. Sometimes she had to walk long distances with a heavy basket of herbs to reach a sick villager. Sometimes the remedies did not work as quickly as she hoped. She would worry silently, hoping she had done everything she could. But each time she helped someone feel better, her heart swelled with pride and purpose. She had discovered that her worth was not measured by Kofi's approval, but by the good she brought into the lives of others. One evening, Kofi came home from a meeting with some men from the neighboring village. He was tired and irritated, but he noticed Asha helping a small boy with a bandaged knee. The boy smiled at her and thanked her for the herbal paste that eased his pain. Kofi watched silently, feeling a strange warmth he had not felt before. He realized that while he had been angry and cruel, Asha had been quietly building respect, trust and love from everyone around her. Kofi tried to speak sharply as he usually did, but the words caught in his throat. He had no control over the rising guilt and shame inside him. Asha looked at him calmly without fear or anger. She did not gloat or remind him of his cruelty. She simply stood there, strong, patient and steady. That night, Kofi could not sleep. He thought about the many times he had hurt her, the cruel names he had called her, the anger he had shown without reason. And he thought about how she had continued to smile, help and remain strong. Asha had grown beyond his control. She had become someone he could no longer belittle or intimidate. The next morning, Kofi tried a small change. He did not shout or scold. Instead, he helped with some chores, carrying firewood and water. Asha watched quietly, her face calm and gentle. She did not comment on the change, but Kofi felt her approval in a way he had never understood before. It was a silent acknowledgement of strength, courage, and dignity. Asha continued to help villagers and care for her home. Her reputation as a healer grew. She knew which herbs worked for which sickness, she could calm a crying child, and she could offer advice that eased people's fears and worries. Even the women who had doubted her in the past now came to her for guidance. Her heart was full of pride but not arrogance. She felt happy knowing she could make a difference even in small ways. Kofi began to participate in village matters too, quietly observing Asha's way of living. He noticed that she treated everyone with respect, that she helped without expecting reward, and that her heart was full of compassion. Slowly he began to understand that real strength came from kindness, patience and courage, not from anger or control. One day, a neighbor came running to the house, carrying news of a man in the next village who was sick. Kofi looked at Asha, expecting her to refuse, but she simply nodded and began gathering herbs. Kofi found himself helping her pack the basket and even offered to accompany her. For the first time he felt proud of her and willing to support her efforts. As they walked to the neighboring village, Asha felt a quiet joy. She carried not only herbs but also hope, kindness, and the knowledge that she had grown beyond fear. Kofi walked beside her, silent at first, but then he said softly, "I am sorry, Asha. I have been cruel and harsh. You are stronger than I imagined." Asha looked at him and smiled gently. "We all have the chance to change," she said. "It is never too late to be better. I have learned to rise above hurt and I hope you will too." From that day Kofi began to change slowly. He tried to speak kindly, helped Asha with chores and even listened when she advised him. The villagers noticed the change too. They saw that Asha's calm courage had not only helped them but had also transformed her husband. Her strength and patience had created respect and admiration, not just from the village, but from the one who had once hurt her the most. Asha realized that the turning point was not one single moment, but many small acts of courage, patience and kindness. Every time she chose to remain calm, every time she helped someone, every time she smiled despite pain, she was building a life stronger than fear. She understood that true power did not come from force or harsh words, but from love, kindness and inner strength. Even when life was hard, even when Kofi still struggled with old habits, Asha walked forward with confidence. She had discovered a strength that could not be broken, a courage that could not be silenced, and a dignity that could not be stolen. She was a healer, a helper, and a woman who had found her place in the world, respected by all, including the one who had once hurt her deeply. And so, the village began to see Asha differently. She was no longer just a quiet wife enduring hardship. She was a woman of strength, wisdom, and kindness. People came to her not just for healing but for guidance. Children smiled at her, villagers sought her advice, and even Kofi began to learn patience and respect from her example. Asha's journey had reached a turning point. She had moved from being a woman defined by others' cruelty to someone who defined herself, who built her own life with courage, kindness, and heart. She had learned that the greatest change comes not from others, but from within. And as she prepared to care for her child and continue helping the village, Asha knew that her life, though still filled with challenges, was now full of hope, strength, and purpose. The day Asha gave birth was filled with both fear and hope. She had been waiting for this moment for months, feeling the tiny life move inside her, imagining the child she and Kofi had brought into the world. The villagers had watched her with care and concern, knowing she had endured so much and worked so hard to help them. They gathered quietly around her small home, offering prayers and gentle encouragement, hoping the birth would go smoothly. Asha labored through the long night with strength she did not know she had. Every pang of pain reminded her that she had survived so much already, and that she could face anything with courage. Mama Lela was there, holding her hand and whispering calming words. "Breathe, child. You are strong. The little one will come safely." Asha nodded, gripping the old woman's hand tightly, feeling her presence give her courage. Kofi, who had been silent and worried, stood nearby, pacing the small room. He had never seen Asha like this. He had always thought her quietness and gentleness were signs of weakness, but now he watched her face, calm and determined even in pain, and he realized how wrong he had been. For the first time he truly understood that her strength was deep and unshakable, built from patience, courage, and love. As the hours passed, the cries of a newborn filled the air. Asha held her baby close, tears streaming down her face, feeling a mixture of relief, joy, and amazement. The tiny hands, the soft skin, the gentle breathing, it all seemed miraculous. The villagers cheered softly, stepping forward to see the child and offer congratulations. Asha smiled through her tears, feeling a warmth in her heart that no hardship had ever given her. She looked at Kofi, who stood frozen, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and guilt. "You were wrong, Kofi," she said softly, rocking the baby in her arms. "Life has more beauty than cruelty. There is more strength in love than in anger. Our child has brought us hope." Kofi swallowed hard, feeling a lump in his throat. He had spent months being harsh and cruel, criticizing Asha for her appearance, for her actions, for simply being. But seeing her endure pain, care for others, and now bring new life into the world, he felt a shift inside him. A change began, quiet but real. He understood, perhaps for the first time, the depth of her courage and the weight of his own mistakes. The villagers gathered around, bringing gifts of food, cloth, and small trinkets for the newborn. Children laughed and ran, wanting to see the baby, while older women whispered to each other, praising Asha's strength. Even men who had once mocked her now looked on with respect. Asha's kindness, patience, and care had become clear to all, and Kofi realized that she had earned admiration not through complaints or demands, but through quiet, consistent strength. As the celebration continued outside, Kofi stayed inside, unable to take his eyes off Asha. He watched how she gently cradled the baby, how her touch was tender, how her voice calmed the child. He realized that she had grown in ways he had never understood. Her heart had become a source of light, not only for their child but for the whole village. Her compassion had created respect, love, and admiration, and he had been blind to it for far too long. Later that evening, as the sun set in soft shades of orange and pink, Kofi approached Asha. He knelt beside her, taking her hand gently in his own. "I am sorry, Asha," he said softly. "I was cruel and harsh. I did not see your strength. I did not see what a good person you are." Asha looked at him quietly. She did not smile immediately, nor did she rush to forgive him, but she held his hand. "We all make mistakes," she said gently. "What matters is that we learn and that we try to be better. I hope you will change not just for me but for yourself and our child." Kofi nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He realized that respect and love could not be demanded, they must be earned, and Asha had earned both through her courage, patience, and care. From that moment he felt a change begin deep inside him, a quiet determination to become a better husband, a better father, and a better man. The days that followed were filled with small joys. Asha fed the baby, rocked it to sleep, and cared for it with gentle hands and a loving heart. The villagers came to visit, bringing meals and small gifts, and they marveled at the bond between mother and child. Even Kofi began to help, holding the baby carefully, watching Asha's methods and learning from her example. Asha's strength continued to shine. She did not allow the past cruelty to define her days. She treated Kofi with patience, guiding him with quiet words instead of anger. She cared for the baby, for the village, and for herself, building a life filled with hope and purpose. Her heart had become a source of inspiration for everyone around her. One morning, Kofi watched Asha take the baby outside to the garden. She sat on a small bench under the shade of a tree, singing softly to the child while showing it the colorful flowers. Kofi felt a pang of regret for all the times he had mocked her, all the times he had failed to see her strength. And yet he also felt hope. He realized that their life could now be different. He could change. They could be a family built on love, respect, and courage. Asha noticed Kofi watching and smiled gently. She did not scold him for past mistakes. She simply held the baby closer and whispered, "Our child is a gift, and so is every day we have to do better." Kofi nodded silently, understanding the truth in her words. He had learned, finally, that true strength comes not from anger, not from criticism, but from compassion, patience, and courage. The village continued to celebrate quietly, praising Asha's bravery and kindness. People came to see the baby, but they also came to honor Asha's heart and her strength. Even the neighbors who had doubted her in the past now spoke of her with respect. She had shown that life could be transformed not through force or harshness, but through quiet determination, love, and courage. Kofi began to change slowly. He helped with chores, he spoke more gently, and he listened to Asha's guidance. He realized that he could learn from her example, and that being strong did not mean being harsh, it meant being patient, caring, and loving. He understood that the true miracle was not only the baby but Asha's heart, which had inspired him, the villagers, and now even himself. Asha, holding her baby, felt a quiet pride. She had survived hardship, she had endured cruelty, and she had learned to rise above pain. Now she had created life, hope, and change, not just in her own home, but in the heart of her husband and the village around her. She understood that courage, kindness, and love could transform even the hardest hearts. As the sun set and the village slowly grew quiet, Asha held the baby close and whispered, "We are strong. We are loved. And together we will face the world with courage." Kofi stood beside her, his heart full of new understanding. For the first time he saw Asha not just as a wife or a mother, but as a woman whose strength and compassion had changed his life and the lives of everyone around her. Asha had become more than a survivor, she had become a symbol of hope, patience, and courage. The village saw it, Kofi felt it, and the child in her arms would one day grow up surrounded by the love and example of a strong, kind mother. And in that quiet evening, as the stars began to appear in the sky, Asha knew that life, even after hardship, could hold miracles, and that she had lived to witness the greatest one of all. Life in the village of Kidale began to feel different after Asha gave birth. Her days were busy, but they were no longer heavy with worry or fear. She had a baby now, a small, gentle life that depended on her care and love. Each morning she would wake early, feed the child, and then step outside to tend the garden, gather herbs, or help villagers with small remedies. She moved through her day with a sense of purpose and calm that many in the village admired. People had begun to speak of Asha in a new way. No longer was she just the quiet woman who endured cruelty at home. She was now known as a healer, a helper, and a woman whose heart and strength had brought light to the lives of many. Mothers would bring their children to her when they were sick, men would come for advice about fevers or cuts, and even strangers passing through the village would seek her out. Asha treated everyone with patience, teaching them about herbs, showing them how to care for themselves, and listening to their worries. Kofi watched all of this quietly at first. He had learned to respect Asha, not out of fear, but because he truly understood the depth of her strength. Her courage, kindness, and calmness were powerful, and he realized that he had much to learn from her. He tried to help when he could, carrying firewood, fetching water, and even assisting with the baby when Asha needed rest. At first, it felt strange for him to act differently, but over time he began to see the value in patience and gentleness. One morning, Asha was helping a sick woman in her small hut. The woman's hands shook as she spoke, worried for her child. Asha listened carefully, examined the herbs she had brought, and prepared a simple tea to ease the fever. Kofi stood nearby, observing quietly. He noticed the careful way she measured the herbs, the gentle tone she used, and the reassurance she offered. He thought about how he had once called her ugly, blamed her for small things, and failed to see the beauty of her heart. Now he realized that true beauty was not in appearance, but in courage, resilience, and love. The villagers often came to watch the family together. They saw Kofi helping Asha, holding the baby, or carrying a basket of herbs to someone in need. He no longer shouted or criticized, he listened, learned, and showed care. People whispered to each other about the change in him, and they admired Asha even more for the patience and example she had set. Children would run to the house, laughing and playing, and Asha would smile at them, her heart full of warmth and pride. Asha also taught Kofi how to help the villagers properly. She showed him which herbs were good for minor illnesses, how to soothe a crying child, and how to treat small cuts or burns. Kofi learned quickly and was surprised by how rewarding it felt to help someone and see them smile with relief. He began to understand that strength did not come from anger or control, but from love, care, and attention to others. Asha had not just healed the villagers, she had healed him too. Days passed into months and life in the household became peaceful. The home, once filled with tension and fear, now echoed with laughter, chatter, and the soft coos of the baby. Asha and Kofi shared quiet moments together, discussing the day's events, planning for the garden, and celebrating the small successes of the villagers they helped. Kofi often felt pride in Asha's work, and she was proud of the progress he was making in becoming a kind and gentle man. The village noticed these changes. People spoke of Asha with respect and admiration. "She is not just a healer of the body," one woman said. "She heals hearts too." Children would run to the couple wanting to play with the baby or to ask Asha questions about the plants and herbs. Neighbors would bring gifts of fruits or grains, thanking Asha for her help, and she would accept with a warm smile. Kofi would stand beside her, quietly supportive, no longer the harsh man he had once been. Asha's journey had taught her many lessons. She had learned that patience and kindness could overcome cruelty, that courage was not just in facing danger, but in facing life's small hardships with dignity, and that resilience came from believing in herself and her heart. She now understood that true happiness came from helping others, living with purpose, and nurturing the people around her. One afternoon, Asha and Kofi walked through the village together, the baby wrapped safely in Asha's arms. Villagers greeted them warmly, children ran ahead to show the flowers they had picked, and neighbors smiled with gratitude. Kofi looked at Asha and felt a deep sense of love and respect. "I see now," he said softly. "Your heart has always been beautiful, stronger than I ever knew. You have taught me more than I could have imagined." Asha smiled at him gently. "We are both learning," she said. "We can change, we can grow, and we can help others. That is what makes life meaningful." Even in quiet moments at home, Asha continued to teach, care, and guide. She showed the baby the small garden, sang soft songs, and whispered lessons about kindness, patience, and courage. She knew that her child would grow up in a world shaped by love, example, and care, not fear. Kofi often watched, amazed at how much she had accomplished and how much she continued to inspire him and everyone around them. Seasons passed, and the village grew healthier and happier under Asha's quiet leadership. People began to seek advice for bigger problems, and Asha would gently guide them, always teaching that patience and kindness were stronger than anger or cruelty. Kofi had become a man who helped willingly, who spoke with respect, and who shared in the joy of others. Together they had created a home filled with laughter, love, and hope. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with gold and orange, Asha held the baby and looked at Kofi. She saw a man who had learned humility, patience, and love, and she felt pride in the family they had built together. The hardships of the past seemed far away, replaced by days of hope, care, and shared responsibility. Asha had become a symbol in the village. Not just because she healed the sick, but because she had shown what courage, resilience, and a kind heart could accomplish. People admired her not only for her knowledge but for the strength of her spirit. She had turned suffering into purpose and kindness, and she had inspired change in even the hardest heart, that of Kofi, her husband. Life continued, full of simple joys. The children laughed and played in the yard, villagers came for advice and care, and the family shared meals, stories, and quiet evenings together. Asha felt a deep peace in her heart. She had survived cruelty, faced fear, and grown stronger with every challenge. Now her days were filled with love, learning, and the joy of helping others. Asha knew that the future would still hold challenges. Life was never easy and hardships could return. But she also knew that she and Kofi together had learned the most important lessons. Courage comes from facing life with a strong heart, resilience comes from standing tall despite pain, and true beauty comes from kindness, love, and the ability to help others. She held her baby close and whispered, "We are strong. We are loved. And together we can face whatever comes. Life is beautiful when we choose courage, patience, and kindness." Kofi stood beside her, nodding quietly, knowing that he had learned the same truth. Their home was no longer a place of fear and sadness, but a place of hope, love, and laughter. A home built on respect, care, and shared strength. The village continued to thrive with Asha's guidance and example. People remembered the woman who had once been hurt and belittled, and they celebrated the healer, teacher, and mother she had become. Children grew up learning from her example, neighbors sought her advice, and even Kofi continued to grow into a man shaped by patience and love. Asha had completed her journey. She had endured hardship, discovered her strength, and transformed her life and the lives of those around her. She had shown that true beauty does not come from appearances or praise, but from courage, resilience, and a heart that chooses love and kindness every day. Her life, once heavy with fear and cruelty, was now full of hope, joy, and purpose. Asha had not only survived, she had triumphed, and in doing so she had created a new beginning for herself, Kofi, their child, and the village that had watched her rise.